Hello everyone and welcome back to Pixel Sheets. Today we're diving into one of the most powerful functions in Excel and Google Sheets, and that is the VLOOKUP formula. Now the VLOOKUP formula is an incredibly handy function that allows you to search for a value in the first column of a range and then return a value in the same row from a specified column. Let's start by taking a look at an example. Here I have a simple data set containing a list of products and their corresponding prices. So if I want to find a price for a specific product, let's say apples, I would use a VLOOKUP function to do that. So let's start typing out the VLOOKUP. Equals VLOOKUP, start parentheses, and you'll notice there are 4 items that are needed in the VLOOKUP formula. First one being the lookup value. That is the value we want to search for. In our case, it's going to be apples. The next one is the table array, which is the range of cells that contain the data. We're going to select the entire data set. I'll show that in a minute. Followed by the column index number, and that is the number of the column within the range that is selected in the previous table array. And then finally, the range lookup as the last piece is set to true, or if it's omitted, or the other choice is false. True will do an approximate match, whereas false will do an exact match. A majority of the time when you're using a VLOOKUP, you'll want to use false. So let's type in our VLOOKUP formula. So in this case, we're going to have apples here that we want to find the price in this, equals VLOOKUP, start parentheses, lookup value being apples, which is in cell F3 on our sheet. Separate that by a comma. Next is the table array. Again, it's this table here. You can select an individual section. You can select the entire columns. Just make note of what you're selecting. If you have values down here that you do not want within your VLOOKUP, you would want to select the specific range. Otherwise, select the columns. So I'm just going to select the range to show another item with VLOOKUPs just to help not run into problems. Followed by the column index number. In this case, it is column C. Now C is, in practical terms, the third column on the sheet. However, we're looking in the reference to our range that we selected. So it is the second column in our range because it starts in column B. Column B being the categories we want to look up. Column C are the values. We wanted to put the answer of column 2, and then followed by, again, true being approximate match or false being the exact match. We do not want the approximate match more than likely, so a majority of the time you'll put false, close your parenthesis, and there's your output. At any point you can change this cell F3 to another value. Let's say bananas. It will change the VLOOKUP formula accordingly. If you put in something that does not exist, it will return an error value. Now, one note that I do want to mention, I selected the range exactly of these cells. Where you want to be careful is selecting an exact range without protecting your range as if you drag it. So we'll notice what happens when we drag this. I'm going to change this to oranges. And if I drag it, we would expect the value of 3. However, that's not going to be the case. It's going to bring an error. When we look at oranges, this formula is this specific section here. When we look at apples, it moved it. There are 2 ways that you can avoid that. You can avoid that by changing your reference to the columns. Again, being aware that you want anything in the column. Or Let me undo that. Or you can protect the range with dollar signs around both the column and row number. So when you do that, it will take that range appropriately to the following cells, and you can drag it down infinitely, or as infinitely as Excel will allow you to with its rows. Now I'm going to change this back to just the columns, and I will show you that it will do the exact same thing. Again, doing that. So be careful when you're doing VLOOKUPs to not get too specific, because you'll run into those issues. That will persist whether you're doing the same tab or different tabs. Excel will automatically put in dollar signs on ranges if you're referencing another workbook. It will do the dollar signs. Now this is an Excel view. If we're talking about the Google Sheets program, VLOOKUP is exactly the same there. It will function the same way. You will have the same issues with your range if you try to drag and you were exactly specific to your rows that have data. One item also to note for a VLOOKUP is that VLOOKUPs will go in top-down order. So if you have apples at $6, for instance, it is only going to return the $3 one. It is looking at the range. When it finds it, it returns the value. And if I just remove apples here, in cell G4, you will notice it will change to 6. So be note of that if you have multiple occurrences of a record, it is only going to pull back one of them, especially if they're contradicting values that you're looking up. So now you can see what are the components to a VLOOKUP, how it works. VLOOKUP is one of the most powerful and likely commonly used functions that you will use in Excel and in Google Sheets. I challenge you to explore different ways that you can do those, whether having a large spreadsheet, you want to pull out a couple of items, or just to quickly find a reference of some sort. So that concludes this video. Thank you for watching. If you found it helpful, don't forget to like it, share, and subscribe for more tips and tricks. Until next time, happy spreadsheeting.